What if the very thing that has been protecting you your whole life is also the reason your manifestations feel stuck? What if the part of you that works hardest to keep you safe is quietly holding you back from the reality you dream about? This isn't just a random thought, it's a truth hidden in plain sight. And today we're going to expose it. You see, many people approach manifestation as if it's about repeating affirmations or just thinking positively. But here's the shocking part. Your conscious mind, the part that says the words and does the visualizations, is not the main player. Beneath all of that sits something else, something powerful, protective and stubborn. Your ego. Your ego doesn't like risk. It doesn't like uncertainty. It doesn't like stepping into the unknown where quantum manifestation truly happens. And because of that, it builds walls. Invisible walls that keep you locked in patterns, repeating the same results, no matter how badly you want a breakthrough. Think about it. How many times have you felt inspired to set a new intention, only to hear a voice inside say, "That's not realistic. What if it fails? What will people think?" That voice is not your higher self. That is ego, playing the role of gatekeeper. It promises safety but at the cost of your expansion. And here's the secret most people don't realize. The universe doesn't respond to ego, it responds to energy, vibration, alignment. When ego dominates, your frequency is filled with doubt, fear and control. When ego steps back, your natural state of flow begins to radiate. In this video, we're going to explore why ego blocks easy quantum manifestation and how you can shift out of its grip. You'll learn the subtle ways ego disguises itself, sometimes as logic, sometimes as discipline, sometimes even as being practical. You'll also discover how to tell whether your desire comes from ego's hunger for status and validation, or from your soul's authentic call for expansion. That distinction alone can change everything. Stay with me until the end, because I'll share practices that don't just silence the ego temporarily, but teach it a new role, transforming it from a block into an ally. These aren't the typical just think positive tricks you've heard before. They're deeper rooted in the very nature of how energy and consciousness interact in the quantum field. Imagine the relief of no longer wrestling with your own doubts. Imagine being able to set an intention and actually feel at peace with it, instead of anxiously waiting to see if it works. That's what happens when ego loosens its grip. The path becomes lighter, the flow feels natural, and manifestation stops being a fight. So ask yourself right now, has your ego been protecting you, or has it been protecting your limits? By the time you finish this video, you'll see clearly why the barrier has never been the universe, never been your worth, but only the walls your ego built. And you'll know exactly how to step beyond them. Because the truth is, quantum manifestation is not hard. It only feels hard when ego insists on control. Let's uncover how to finally set yourself free. Before we talk about the ego and how it blocks you, we need to first understand what quantum manifestation really means. Many people confuse it with the law of attraction, and while they share some similarities, quantum manifestation goes much deeper. The law of attraction often focuses on the surface. Think positive thoughts, visualize, and try to attract what you want. Quantum manifestation, however, isn't only about thinking or wishing, it's about understanding the very fabric of reality, and how your state of being interacts with the field of possibilities around you. In quantum manifestation, everything begins with energy. Science already shows us that everything in the universe is made of energy, vibrating at different frequencies. You, your thoughts, your emotions, and even your beliefs all carry a unique vibration. When you shift your energy, you shift what you connect with in the quantum field. This means manifestation is less about forcing something external to happen, and more about aligning your inner energy with the reality you want to experience. Instead of trying to chase outcomes, you tune yourself to the frequency of them. Vibration plays a critical role in this process. Think of your vibration as the signal you're sending out at every moment. When your vibration is filled with fear, doubt, or lack, you naturally resonate with experiences that match those states. On the other hand, when you embody gratitude, trust, and expansion, Your vibration attracts circumstances that align with those emotions. The universe doesn't respond to words alone, it responds to the vibration behind them. That's why simply saying affirmations without feeling them rarely works. The vibration matters more than the sentence itself. Alignment is another key piece of quantum manifestation. Alignment means your thoughts, feelings, and actions are moving in the same direction as your desired reality. For example, if you say you want abundance but you constantly feel scarcity and make choices from fear of losing, you're out of alignment. Alignment requires coherence between mind, heart, and energy. When all parts of you are aligned, manifestation begins to feel effortless, because there's no inner conflict pushing against your intention. It's like turning your whole being into a magnet that naturally draws what matches it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of manifestation is the difference between being and doing. Most of us are conditioned to believe that success comes only from action, constant doing, constant effort, constant pushing, but in quantum manifestation being comes first. Being is about embodying the state of the outcome now, before it physically appears. If you want love, you begin by being love. If you want wealth, you embody the feeling of already being abundant. Doing then flows naturally from that state of being, but it's no longer forced. It's inspired, aligned, and often far more effective. This is why quantum manifestation feels different from the traditional law of attraction. It doesn't put all the pressure on the conscious mind to think hard enough or visualize long enough. Instead, it recognizes that your reality emerges from your overall state of being. Your energy is the cause, and the physical world reflects it back as the effect. When you live this way, manifestation stops being about struggle and starts being about flow. When we talk about ego, many people imagine pride or arrogance, but ego is much more subtle than that. At its core, ego is simply the identity you've built over time. It's the story you tell yourself about who you are, shaped by your past experiences, fears, and the ways you've learned to protect yourself. Every memory, every moment of pain, every success or failure has contributed to this identity. The ego collects these pieces and builds a version of you that it believes will keep you safe in the world. This identity is not who you truly are at your essence. It's more like a mask you wear. The ego convinces you that this mask is your real self, but in reality, it's just a construction designed for survival. It says things like, I am someone who doesn't take risks, or I always need to be in control, or I can't trust people. These statements aren't universal truths, they're defense mechanisms the ego has created to protect you from perceived danger. It's not evil, it's just trying to do its job. The purpose of ego is survival. Long before manifestation and spiritual growth, your nervous system and your ego worked hand in hand to keep you alive. If something felt threatening, the ego would step in with fear, doubt, or avoidance. Even if the threat wasn't physical, like rejection, embarrassment, or failure, the ego treated it with the same seriousness as a wild animal in the forest. Its goal was never joy or expansion. Its goal was safety. To the ego, comfort equals life. Predictability equals survival. Anything outside of that comfort zone is seen as a risk, even if it's exactly what your soul longs for. Because of this, the ego prefers what's familiar. It doesn't matter if the familiar is painful or limiting, at least it's known. That's why people can stay stuck in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, or patterns that don't serve them. The ego whispers, at least we know how to survive this. The unknown, no matter how full of potential, feels too dangerous. And so the ego builds walls around you, not to punish you, but to protect you from stepping into territory it can't control. Predictability is the ego's favorite ground. If the ego can predict how tomorrow will go, it feels calm. That's why it loves routines, rules, and expectations. It thrives on control. The problem is that true growth, expansion, and manifestation all happen in the unknown, in the unpredictable space where new possibilities live. The ego doesn't understand that. To the ego, stepping into uncertainty feels like death. To your higher self, uncertainty is where all creation begins. So the ego, in its attempt to keep you safe, often blocks the very experiences that could fulfill you. It's like a guard at the gate who won't let you leave, even though freedom and abundance wait on the other side. It clings to past patterns guided by fear and protection, because that's all it knows how to do. It is not the enemy, but it is not meant to lead. Its role is survival, not manifestation. The ego has a deep craving for certainty. It doesn't feel safe unless it knows exactly what will happen next. This is why the ego often demands proof before it believes. If you set an intention for a new reality, the ego immediately asks, but where's the evidence? How do you know this will work? What if nothing happens? It wants visible results before it can relax, but manifestation doesn't work that way. Quantum manifestation requires stepping into the unseen first, trusting energy and alignment long before physical proof appears. The ego cannot stand that kind of uncertainty, so it tries to pull you back to what feels predictable. Control is another thing the ego clings to. It wants to be the one steering every detail, making sure nothing unexpected happens. This might sound useful, but when it comes to manifestation, control quickly becomes resistance. The universe doesn't flow through force, it flows through openness. Yet the ego believes that if it can control every step, it will guarantee the outcome. So it tries to hold on tightly, scripting exactly how and when your desires should show up. But the more the ego controls, the less space there is for synchronicity, surprise and alignment. The ego also has a complicated relationship with change. For the ego, change equals risk. Even positive change feels dangerous, because it requires stepping into the unknown. Imagine wanting to attract a new career, a loving relationship or financial freedom. To your higher self, these are possibilities filled with excitement. To your ego, they represent unpredictable outcomes. What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you lose everything? These are the whispers of the ego trying to keep you in the familiar, even if the familiar is unfulfilling. The unknown threatens the ego's sense of control, so it pushes back against change with fear and doubt. This is why the ego often tries to force outcomes. It doesn't want to wait for alignment, so it insists on pushing things into place. It plans every detail, micromanages every step, and demands immediate feedback. It's the voice that tells you to check constantly if your manifestation is working, or that you need to work harder, hustle more and control every variable. But manifestation isn't built on force, it's built on flow, timing, and allowing. The ego doesn't understand this, so it tries to take over with effort and strategy, often leaving you exhausted and frustrated. When the ego runs the show, manifestation feels heavy and stressful. You may find yourself repeating affirmations without belief, visualizing but doubting, acting but not trusting. This isn't because the universe is against you, it's because the ego is trying to replace surrender with control. The truth is, the more the ego forces, the more it blocks the natural unfolding of what could have come with ease. The ego believes micromanagement guarantees success, but in reality, it builds resistance. The harder it pushes, the less room there is for the universe to move. Resistance is one of the clearest signs that the ego is interfering with your manifestation. Resistance doesn't always look like a loud refusal. Often it shows up quietly as procrastination, self-doubt or worry. You know what you want to create, but instead of moving forward with clarity, you find yourself putting things off, second-guessing every choice, or spending more time imagining what could go wrong than what could go right. Procrastination is the ego's way of keeping you in the safe zone. By delaying action, it avoids the risk of failure, but it also prevents progress. Worry and self-doubt drain your energy, filling your vibration with fear rather than trust. Inner conflict is another powerful block created by ego. You may say you want something, a new opportunity, a loving relationship or greater freedom, but at the same time, a part of you whispers, that's not possible for you. This inner split creates mixed signals in your energy. One part is pulling forward while the other is holding back. Manifestation requires coherence, but ego thrives on doubt, feeding the belief that your desires are unrealistic. The result is stagnation. Even when opportunities appear, you might not recognize them, because the conflict inside you clouds your vision. Feelings of unworthiness often lie beneath these doubts. The ego convinces you that you are not enough, that you haven't worked hard enough, or that others are more deserving than you. This sense of being unworthy creates fear of failure. Instead of reaching for something bigger, you settle for less, believing it's safer. Fear of failure can be so strong that it keeps you from trying at all. The ego says, if you don't try, you can't fail. But in reality, not trying is the very thing that guarantees staying stuck. Manifestation cannot take root in soil filled with shame or low self-value. When you feel unworthy, your vibration carries resistance, and that resistance slows down the natural flow of creation. Another subtle way the ego blocks you is through attachment to the outcome. When you set a rigid expectation, how exactly something must happen, when it must appear, and what it must look like, you leave no space for the universe to surprise you. The ego insists on a specific path, because it believes control ensures success. But manifestation rarely follows a straight line. Opportunities may come in unexpected ways, often better than you imagined. Yet when you're attached to only one version of the outcome, you dismiss or resist what doesn't match that picture. This attachment creates pressure, and pressure creates resistance. Instead of being in a state of openness and flow, you become tense, impatient, and doubtful. All of these patterns, procrastination in a conflict, unworthiness, fear and attachment, are ways the ego tries to protect you. It believes it's keeping you safe from disappointment, rejection, or loss. But in reality, it builds invisible barriers between you and your desires. Resistance is not a sign that manifestation isn't working, it's a sign that the ego is gripping too tightly. Quantum manifestation asks for something that the ego struggles to give: surrender. To manifest from the quantum field, you have to let go of control, and allow energy to align in ways you cannot predict. You have to trust the unseen, trust the timing, and embrace uncertainty. This goes against everything the ego is built to do. The ego wants guarantees before it invests hope. It wants to see proof before it believes. But the quantum field doesn't work on proof. It works on faith, energy, and alignment. To step into that field, you must release the need to know exactly how and when your desire will arrive. The ego resists this release, clinging to certainty as if uncertainty means danger. Ego also fears the loss of identity. Imagine manifesting a completely new life, greater freedom, deeper love, higher success. To your higher self, this sounds like expansion. To your ego, it feels like death. Why? Because the ego is attached to who you've always been, even if that version of you is small or limited. It's tied to your labels, your story, your familiar patterns. Change threatens that identity, and with change comes the possibility of being judged or failing in front of others. The ego cannot handle this vulnerability. It prefers you stay in the role you already know, because at least then, rejection feels less likely. Manifestation, however, demands that you step into a version of yourself that the ego doesn't recognize yet. That leap feels terrifying to the part of you that craves safety. Another reason ego blocks manifestation is because it thrives on duality and separation. Ego thinks in terms of me versus them, success versus failure, worthy versus unworthy. It sees life as a competition or a struggle, with clear winners and losers. But the quantum field doesn't operate in separation. It operates in unity and flow. In the quantum field there is no lack. Everything exists as potential, waiting for you to align with it. The ego cannot understand this because it is built on comparison and scarcity. It says, if they have it, I can't. The quantum field says, there is enough for all. This clash of perspectives keeps you from stepping fully into the infinite possibilities that manifestation offers. Finally, the ego always gravitates to the comfort zone. It believes that safety is more important than growth. Comfort feels predictable,
and predictability feels like survival. But quantum leaps, those massive shifts in reality, require stepping into discomfort. They require you to walk into the unknown without a roadmap, trusting that the ground will appear under your feet. The ego fights this process because it cannot see the outcome in advance. It clings to what is familiar, even if it means staying stuck. The irony is that the very discomfort the ego avoids is the doorway to the freedom, abundance and expansion your soul is asking for. Without that step into the unknown, manifestation cannot happen. When the ego takes charge of manifestation, the first thing that often happens is delay. You may set an intention with excitement, but instead of flowing smoothly, the process feels stuck or painfully slow. This isn't because the universe is ignoring you, but because the vibration you're sending out is clouded by ego's demands. The ego wants certainty and proof, so that resistance shows up as hesitation, doubt and control, all of which slow the natural unfolding. Sometimes the manifestation does arrive, but not in the way you hoped. It becomes distorted, shaped more by fear and control than by trust and openness. Instead of receiving the clear reflection of your soul's desire, you get a fragmented version that leaves you wondering why it doesn't feel right. This happens because when ego drives manifestation, it often chases what looks impressive or safe, rather than what the soul truly longs for. Ego-based desires may bring temporary satisfaction, status, approval, recognition, but they rarely bring lasting fulfillment. You might manifest a job that pays well but drains your energy, or a relationship that looks good on the outside but lacks depth. At first you think you've succeeded, because you got what you asked for. But soon you notice the emptiness. That emptiness is the sign that the ego, not the soul, the soul desires alignment, growth, and joy. The ego desires validation and safety. When manifestation serves the ego alone, it feels incomplete, because the deeper part of you knows this isn't what you were really reaching for. Another pattern that shows up when ego is in control is the endless cycle of doing. The ego doesn't understand the power of being. It believes results only come from constant action, constant effort, constant busyness. So instead of aligning your energy and trusting the process, you find yourself overworking, overthinking, and overplanning. You create long to-do lists, chase strategies, and micromanage every detail, believing that effort alone will force things into place. But manifestation isn't built on force. It's built on resonance. Being in the right energy draws opportunities naturally. When you're aligned, the right actions appear effortlessly and flow with it. Doing without being, however, feels heavy and exhausting, and often leads to burnout without real results. This obsession with doing is how the ego distracts you from stillness. In stillness you connect with your higher self and the quantum field. In stillness you sense what is truly aligned. But stillness feels uncomfortable for the ego because it loses control. So it pushes you into constant activity, tricking you into believing you're making progress. Yet beneath all the doing, the deeper truth remains. Manifestation flows not from how much you do, but from who you are being. The more the ego pulls you into action without alignment, the more delayed, distorted, and unfulfilling your manifestations become. The first step in shifting from ego to alignment is awareness. You have to notice when the ego is speaking. Ego often comes through as a critical inner voice, filled with doubt, worry, or the need for control. It might sound like, "This will never work," or "You're not ready," or "What will people think?" At other times it disguises itself as practicality, insisting you should settle for less because your dreams are unrealistic. By paying close attention to the tone of these thoughts, you begin to separate ego chatter from the deeper voice of your higher self. Awareness turns the unconscious into the conscious, and once you see ego clearly, loses much of its hidden power. After awareness comes the practice of listening. Instead of shutting ego down or fighting with it, pause and ask, what are you really afraid of? Ego always speaks from fear. It fears rejection, failure and change. When you listen closely, you often discover that behind the harsh words lies a tender attempt to protect you. For example, if your ego says, "Don't try, you'll fail," the fear behind it may be, "I don't want you to feel hurt again." Recognizing this softens the relationship. Instead of treating the ego as an enemy, you can see it as a misguided protector doing its best with old information. This is where compassion and curiosity become powerful tools. Instead of rejecting or silencing the ego, approach it with kindness. Imagine it as a younger version of yourself, scared and trying to keep you safe. You don't need to obey its warnings, but you can thank it for caring. Ask curious questions. What are you protecting me from? Is this fear still true today? This compassionate dialogue shifts the energy from conflict to understanding. When the ego feels heard, it often quiets down. Fighting ego only strengthens it, but compassion transforms the relationship, allowing you to move forward with less inner resistance. Once you've created this space of understanding, you can begin to realign your desires. This step is crucial, because not every desire comes from your soul. Some desires are fueled by ego, wanting recognition, control or external validation. There's nothing wrong with wanting success or comfort, but if the desire is rooted only in ego, it will never bring deep fulfillment. To check, ask yourself, does this desire expand me, or does it just protect me? Does it feel light and inspired, or heavy and pressured? Soul desires often feel exciting and expansive, even if they're uncertain. Ego desires usually feel tight, urgent or tied to proving yourself. By filtering your intentions through these questions, you make sure your manifestations are aligned with your true self, not just your protective identity. Through awareness, listening, compassion and realignment, you begin to shift the balance. Ego doesn't disappear, but it no longer drives the process. Instead, it takes a supportive role, while your soul. This is how manifestation moves from struggle into flow. One of the most powerful practices in aligning with your deeper self is creating an inner dialogue with your ego. Instead of resisting or suppressing it, you sit with it and ask, "What are you protecting me from?" This simple question opens a doorway into self-understanding. Often the ego reveals fears of rejection, abandonment, or loss that have been carried since childhood. By listening instead of battling, you dissolve inner conflict and bring the protective parts of yourself into harmony with your higher vision. The ego doesn't have to be silenced, it needs to be understood. When you ask this question sincerely, you allow fear to soften and create space for love and trust to guide you. From this place of understanding, you can move into emotion alignment. Emotion alignment means embodying the feeling of already having what you want right now. If your desire is love, you tune into the vibration of love within yourself. If your desire is abundance, you practice the emotions of freedom, security and joy, as though your abundance is already present. The universe responds more to your vibration than to your words, and by embodying the emotion of your desire, you tune your entire being to receive it. This practice is not about pretending or forcing a false positivity, but genuinely allowing yourself to feel what your soul longs for, as if it is already part of your reality. Gratitude plays a key role in this process. When you give thanks as though your manifestation is already real, you bridge the gap between desire and fulfillment. Gratitude rewires your mind to focus on abundance instead of lack. By saying thank you for what is coming, as if it has already arrived, you create a powerful state of receptivity. It's not about faking it, but about deeply trusting that the universe has already said yes. This kind of gratitude lifts your energy, removes doubt, and amplifies your ability to align with your higher path. Each moment of gratitude is like a signal to the universe that you are ready to receive. The final step is letting go of rigid outcomes and surrendering the how to the universe. This is often the hardest part for the ego because it thrives on control and certainty. But true manifestation requires trust. You set your intention, align your emotions, and then release the need. Dictate every detail. The universe has infinite ways of bringing your desire to life, often in ways you cannot predict. By letting go of the how, you make space for synchronicities, unexpected opportunities, and effortless flow. Holding on tightly creates resistance. Surrender opens the path for miracle. This balance, listening to ego with compassion, aligning emotionally with your vision, practicing gratitude as if it is already real, and surrendering control, creates a powerful field of energy around you. In this field, manifestation is no longer about forcing outcomes, but about flowing into them. It becomes less about chasing and more about receiving. Through this process, your soul leads, your ego supports, and the universe responds. Ego is not your enemy, but it can quietly block the flow of quantum manifestation. The good news is, with awareness and alignment, you can shift this pattern and open the path again. The next time you feel resistance, pause and ask yourself, is this my soul speaking, or my ego trying to protect me? That single moment of checking in can transform everything. Remember, when ego steps back, manifestation becomes easier, lighter, and more natural. You now have powerful tools at your fingertips, whether it's listening to your ego with compassion, aligning emotionally with your vision, or surrendering the how to the universe. Choose just one of these practices today. Try it, and observe the difference in how you feel and what unfolds. Quantum manifestation doesn't have to be a struggle. It can be effortless when you let your soul lead, and allow the universe to do its work. If this message resonated with you, make sure to like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more insights on aligning with your true power. Your journey is just beginning. Don't miss the next step.